I want to take the IELTS exam. Where do I start? That's what we're talking about today. Welcome back. I know it has been a very long time since I've posted again, but I wanted to tell you guys that for me it has always been about quality over quantity. So if I know that there is some information that I've come across or I've found and I wanted to share that with you and I haven't, or nobody else is talking about it, I know that's a video that I need to share, and that's exactly what I'm here to talk about today. Judging from the title, I'm sure you guys already know what this video is about and what I'm going to talk about here. But I wanted to briefly talk about why I'm making this video today, because I feel that a lot of people still think that this is really unnecessary, and if you're applying to Italy for a student visa, you don't really need to take the IELTS exam. And I wanted to clear that misconception before I do anything else. So I'm not sure how many of you already know this, but if you are applying for an Italian student visa this year, I mean the 2025 intake, and you are already applying to different universities for admissions, you would have already noticed that a lot of the universities have already made it mandatory to submit an IELTS test report. I know there is some confusion where people think that an MOI, which is a medium of instruction, should work as well. But unfortunately, that is not the case for a lot of the universities. Here's why. So what happens is that when you apply to a university and they ask whether you have enough proficiency or whether you're fluent enough in the English language, they ask for IELTS or TOEFL, which are these really globally recognized tests that talk about basically how good you are at speaking the language, understanding the language, writing the language, reading the language, and all that. But the thing is that with the medium of instruction which we get from our Indian universities or schools, it's only talking about how whatever we have studied in India, it was taught to us in English. So it doesn't really tell how proficient you are in English, right? And that's why a lot of the universities don't really accept an MOI, but rather give you a deadline that, okay, within the next 15 days or 20 days or 30 days, you need to submit an IELTS test report. Or if not that, then they would just ask you to submit an IELTS report or a TOEFL result instead. So that is reason number one why I wanted to make a video right now, because as you all are preparing for the IELTS exam, or if you are planning to take an exam in the near future, this is something that you need to know. And the other reason is a very simple one, which is that when you apply for the visa, there is a very high chance that whether you're from the Delhi embassy or whether you're applying through Kolkata consulate or Mumbai or Bangalore or Hyderabad, you will be asked to submit a B2 proficiency certificate along with your application. If in case you don't know, guys, here is what happened last year during the 2024 intake. Sometime around April or May, Delhi embassy released a checklist like they always do. However, sometime around mid-June or during the end of June, they released an updated checklist. What did they change in this checklist? Actually, not much. They only changed very few things, and one of those were adding a B2 proficiency certificate. Now, initially, they were still more flexible. They were taking medium of instruction. They were even accepting PTE or Duolingo test results. But as time progressed, we noticed that they were not really accepting MOI or any other kind of test reports. And they were fixated on IELTS or TOEFL. So it actually got to a point, to be honest, that I spoke to a few students who told me that they got a call from the embassy, and the embassy was asking them specifically for the IELTS report. So, I mean, if you are planning to apply for the intake, then I think that this year they are most likely going to include IELTS or TOEFL in their checklists. And it's important that you prepare for it now, because right now you still have the time. I always have said that if you're applying for a student visa for Italy, I mean, I'm not sure about other consulates or other countries, but in this case, because the documentation process tends to get a little bit complicated, it's always better to prepare in advance. That is always going to help you be more organized, and it's going to make sure that your entire visa process is relatively smooth as compared to if you are leaving things until the last minute. And that's exactly why I wanted to do a short course on IELTS to help you get there faster, because I did a lot of research during my time and I found out that some of the tips and hacks that they shared were actually quite helpful, while others really weren't, realistically speaking. So I thought I'll talk about basically how IELTS work, what are the different strategies, some tips, and do a little bit of hand holding. Because ever since I launched the course, I've already done 2 to 3 batches. I'm on my 3rd batch right now, actually. And what I've come to realize is that students do require a little bit more hand holding than just a few YouTube videos. And so if you are somebody who is struggling, or who is looking for that one person who might be able to help them out, you can please feel free. A paid course is not something what you're looking for. I also wanted to make sure that I am doing just a little bit of something to help out just about everyone. So I created a WhatsApp channel, and over there I've started this thing where I'm doing a daily vocab practice. So I share an English word every day along with its meaning, sentences, uses, etc. And the idea is that I wanted to make sure that you are able to work on your vocabulary, you are able to enhance your vocabulary, and while doing that, you are able to boost your scores in, well, all of the sections, but particularly writing and speaking, because that's what you're marked on. So today's video is essentially my introduction to IELTS. For those of you who don't know the exam pattern, who don't know what exactly to look for when you're preparing for the IELTS exam, this is going to be a short, crisp version of what exactly the IELTS exam is, so that you don't have to end up watching a few different videos to understand the pattern and everything else. So yeah, I think without any more delay, I want to get straight into the laptop and I want to talk to you guys about what happens in the IELTS exam. So see you there. Okay, so let's quickly jump into the class and let me talk to you and take you through the exam pattern of IELTS. I want to start by talking about the 2 main type of IELTS exams, okay? So there is IELTS academic and IELTS general training. So what happens is that when you go in and when you are going to select your IELTS test type, it will give you 2 options, right? So you will either book an academic test or a general training. For those of you who are going for education overseas or are moving for academic purposes, you would be opting for the academic IELTS. And those of you who are moving for PR or just basically relocation, you guys will be going for general training. Now the tests are slightly different, right? So for general training, what they're basically trying to test is, like, they're trying to ensure that you guys are fluent enough in the English language. And when I say fluent enough, I mean they just want to see if you're able to adapt to the daily social contexts, day-to-day life overseas, and whether your English is going to make it easier for you to adapt. With academic, it becomes a little bit more precise, because what happens is that now they're trying to see if you can adapt to the university. So things like, will you be able to listen and read and write at the university level, because you are trying to pursue an education there. So technically speaking, IELTS academic is slightly, I mean, there is a slight difference. It's considered to be slightly harder than general training, but some of the sections are pretty much the same for both, so that shouldn't throw you off. For today's video, I'll be talking about IELTS academic, just to keep it clear. And I also wanted to take this time to just walk you through real quick about the 3 main types of IELTS test, right? So there are 3 main ways in which you can take the exam. Number 1 is the computer-based test, wherein what happens is you go to the test center, and if you've taken any competitive exam lately, you get the idea. They'll give you a pair of headphones, they'll make you sit in a cubicle sort thing, and you'll just take the exam on the computer. Pen and paper based test is a little bit more traditional like way of taking an exam, which is you're going to sit in a big hall with a bunch of students. You will have the pen and paper, and basically pen and paper based test is kind of what we have been taking throughout our school years. So there's that.
I want to sort of mention here that lately there has been some talk that in India they're trying to, or they will be going away with the paper based test, and you'll only have the computer based or the online test now. But since, I mean, while I'm recording this, there has been no official communication from IDP regarding that. So I'm waiting on hearing that. Um, but these are the two main methods. Now, recently they have started something else which is called an online test. So, what happens in an online test? Uh, it's a computer based test only, but the difference is that you will not be going to a test center. So, when you book your test, when you've made the payment, you will get an email with your software link and everything. And once you have that link, you will download that software on your computer, and yeah, you can just take the test at home. So that saves time if in case you live in an area which is quite far from the test center. So that kind of works. Okay, so talking about the four main components of the IELTS exam. See, what I want to talk to you guys here is IELTS is an English testing exam at the end of the day, right? We tend to overcomplicate it a little bit. But the thing to notice and the thing to remember here is that if they were just testing English at the most basic level, they could do an exam which is similar to the ones we have taken back in school. You know, you remember the first section used to be reading, then there used to be a section on grammar, then there was writing, and then there was literature. However, they have come up with a method, a pattern, which will sort of test your fluency and your proficiency in the most comprehensive way possible. Okay, so they're going to check how good you are at listening and understanding the language, how good you are at reading and understanding the language, how well you can write in the language, and how good you are at speaking English. Okay, so all of these four sections, they come with their own small details, things that the examiners are testing. And in my course I go into a lot of detail about each section, what are the different types of questions you can get. I'll go into the detail about the different strategies and everything. But today, since I am just giving you an overview of the exam, I will share a few tips and tricks. But it'll more, I mean, it'll more, most likely it'll be something like I'm trying to show you guys what the exam is going to look like. So just familiarizing you with the exam pattern. Okay, so starting off with the listening section. See, guys, like I told you before, listening section is the area where they're just trying to test how good you are at listening and understanding a conversation, right? So, back when I was preparing, small story, I saw a ton of, I mean, YouTube videos, and I saw a few people who were talking about how there are all these shortcuts that you can take in the listening section, and that will help you score well, and you won't have to listen in, and you won't have to really pay all that detailed attention to the recording. And in my time and in my experience, I will tell you honestly that if you are not able to understand and pay attention to what the conversation is shaping up like, and what exactly is happening when you hear all the people talking, you will not be able to answer correctly. Like, there is just no shortcuts there. Okay, um, let me explain why. So, what happens in the exam is that you get about 30 minutes, right? And there are about 40 questions. The listening section is divided into four sections. A rule of thumb in the listening, I mean, all the sections, is that the exam starts off easy, and as you get into each of the sections, be it listening, reading, writing, or speaking, it'll continue to get harder. So the difficulty level increases. So, for example, if I'm taking the listening section, the section 1 is going to be a lot easier. Section 2 is going to be slightly harder. Section 3 is going to be relatively, I mean, more difficult. And the fourth section is going to be the most challenging. Okay. Now, when I say difficulty level in terms of the listening section, what I mean is it's going to be harder contextually. Okay. So the first section is going to have a very easy breezy conversation happening. Second section, it's going to get a little bit more challenging. Same with section 3. And when you come to the section 4, the context makes it a little bit harder to hold on to the conversation. And that is what students mostly struggle with. So for the listening section, it is incredibly important that you try to keep yourself attentive enough throughout the duration, and you try to understand where the conversation is going. Okay, now it's easy to say that, oh, you just have to listen and you just have to write, but the thing that you're going to struggle with the most in the listening section is you are listening, right? You're trying to understand what's happening. At the same time, you're reading the questions in front of you, and you also have to write the answers. So, you're kind of trying to do four things at once, and that is where it gets a little messy. When I took my first mock test, I remember I got so frustrated because I just could not keep up. But with enough practice, I can assure you guys, you will not only be able to find it a lot easier because you build that momentum, you get familiar to the question types, you start understanding how the recordings go and what to expect, so it gets easier. I can assure you about that. My strategy for this section is to basically utilize the time that you get in the middle. So every 3 questions or 4 questions, they're going to give you a few seconds to revise whatever you've written before, or maybe look at the next few sets of questions. So you should utilize that time to look at the next set of questions. Okay, that is really, really important. What that does is that it gives you an upper hand and you're able to understand the context. You can really pick on the things that you need to listen out for. And when the recording plays, you already know, okay, you need to listen to this point. You need to watch out for this particular word or this context or this situation or this question. And yeah, you can take it from there. So that's my tip for the listening. Now, let's come to the reading section. So the reading section is, the duration is 60 minutes now, unlike the listening section where the duration was around 30 minutes. The number of questions, they're the same, 40 questions. You get 3 passages here. So there is passage number 1, 2, and 3. And like I said previously in the reading section as well, just like the listening section, the difficulty level will increase as you progress. So the first essay you get is going to be easy. Second passage is going to be relatively harder. And the third passage is going to be even more harder. Okay. So my tip here for the reading section is to always start your way backwards and then move backwards. So essentially what I'm trying to say is, once you start with the reading section, I recommend that you start with the third essay, then you move to the second essay, and then you get to the first essay. Now what that does is that you will realize pretty quickly that because you started off with the hardest essay, your mind is now automatically trained to find harder answers and read more contextually difficult text. Okay. Now, once you finish that the third essay, when you move to the second and the first essay, you'll realize that it's a lot easier for you to do and it takes a lot less time. Now, the thing that people struggle with in the reading section is time management, because you have to read 3 essays and you also need to find answers to 40 questions. That is a lot. Okay. So, what happens is that they struggle managing time, because ideally you should be taking about 20 minutes to finish each of the essay, but it doesn't really work like that. Sharing my personal experience, what happened with me was that I remember when I was sitting in for the exam, I finished the third essay, the first one I attempted, in about, I guess, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, I think. And then I finished the second essay in about 15 minutes, and the first essay took me maybe less than 10 minutes. So it was a lot easier for me. So I always recommend, this is a hack you can try. If nothing, I think while you guys are still practicing with your mock tests, you should definitely try this hack to see if it works for you. It's a lot of trial and error to ensure what works for you best. So, yeah, that's for the reading section. Now, coming to the section which is considered to be the most critical and quote unquote the most difficult, the writing section. Okay, this is a section where you really want to work the hardest. I think personally, that's my opinion. You see, guys, what happens in the reading section and the listening section is that you only need to write maybe 1 or 2 words or maybe 3 words at most, right? So while you are still being tested for your listening and reading skills, writing is where you have to do a lot of extra work. Now there are some misconceptions with the writing section. People often think that oh, it's just a writing section, so maybe I just need to work on the grammar. um, that's not the case. I mean, I'll talk to you guys about how you are marked on and how the examiner studies your essay and then scores you. Okay. So before I come into that, let me talk to you what happens. Let me talk to you about what exactly happens in the writing section. So the writing section, guys, is divided in two parts, right? So you get two tasks. Task one, you get 150 words. You need to write that. And task two, you have about 250 words. Okay. Now, this word limit is ideal. It's not a hard deadline. However, I would recommend that try to not exceed it too much. So if, for example, you're writing task one and you have to write 150 words, try not to go to maybe 200 or above that, because A, you will run out of time, and B, it shows that you are not a very accomplished writer. So you're not very confident in what you're writing, and that's why you're just writing more. Less is more, guys. Quality over quantity is something I will always, always recommend. Same with task two. You can probably go up to 275 if you want, but try to stick to the word limit. Okay. Um, the total time that you get is 60 minutes, right? It says the instructions, they say that you should take 20 minutes to write this task and about 40 minutes to write task 2. You should ideally, again, my recommendation, my most basic recommendation for the writing section is to start with task 2 and then move to task 1. The logic is the same. When you start with the harder task, and even if you take longer, it becomes easier to work your way around task 1. So that works. Now, coming to the main thing I wanted to discuss in the writing section, which is it's not just about the grammar. Okay. So there are these things called band descriptors, right? And you would see it if you Google it online. These are released by IDP, and this is essentially a list of things that you are marked on. They are parameters that you guys are scored on. So you're technically scored on four things, right? So see, for the listening and reading section, your answers are either correct or incorrect. There is no gray area. But with the writing section, it becomes a little bit more complicated because everyone writes differently. Writing is quite subjective. So, how does the examiner decide how to score you? So, they have a very elaborate and organized method. And let me try to simplify it, because if you look at the band descriptors as they are released, it can look very scary. And my goal throughout this entire process is to simplify the entire experience for you so that you can go in without feeling scared or anxious or nervous. Okay. So, the first thing that they score you on is how well you're able to answer the question. So, that's important. Okay. Supposedly, if the question has 2 or 3 things that it's asking you to work on, and you only end up answering one, right? Even if you have used proper English, the grammar is spot on, everything is correct, but you did not really answer all the different parts of the questions. So that will bring down your score. The second is the structure and flow of the essay. Um, I mean, if you guys have read any text, I mean, it could be a newspaper article, it could be a magazine article, it could be even your textbooks. There is always a structure and a flow to an essay, right? It has to read properly. If you read any book, uh, your eyes should move very easily. It should be something which makes you engaged. It cannot be abrupt. It cannot be that if I'm talking about something here, then I abruptly start talking about something here and then I go back to something here. I mean, it's a personal thing how people plan to write and sort of structure their essays, but there has to be a structure and a flow to your essay. That is extremely important. The third thing is vocabulary. So things like, are you using repetitive words, or have you tried using some synonyms? Did you try to show off your vocabulary here, right? Because even though writing section is quote unquote a little creative section, I mean, you can talk how you'd like, but the essay is still supposed to be quite formal. It cannot be informal, it cannot be written like we talk in spoken English. So I'm sure you guys are also aware that spoken English and written English are two different things. So how I'm speaking with you guys right now, I wouldn't write an essay like that. So vocabulary is important. Then grammatical range and accuracy. These are two very important things. So of course you need to use proper English. Your grammar needs to be spot on. But grammatical range is also important. So things like, have you been using different types of sentences? Are you just using simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, passive sentences? So all these things together, that makes up for how well you will be scored on your writing section. So these are some of the things that you want to keep in mind. Of course, when I, in my course, to be honest, I go into a lot of detail in the writing section because there is a lot of grammar that needs to be unpacked. I take you through some of my written samples, and also, yeah, I mean, a lot of practice in terms of all the different types of questions that you will get or you can expect. So that's there. Now, coming to the speaking section, I know a lot of people are quite nervous about this section. I mean, they tend to worry that it's going to be a lot harder. But to me personally, I always say that the speaking section is the most fun, informal section, and honestly, it's just a change in perspective that's required here. Okay, so before I go into all of that, let me quickly walk you through the pattern. So basically, the speaking section is the shortest exam section in the entire IELTS exam. So, like I told you guys, the listening section is for about 30 minutes. The reading and the listening and the writing section is about 60 minutes each. Speaking section averages around 14 to 15 minutes. Okay, it could go up to 20 minutes, even 30 minutes in some cases, but that's more rare. Um, Basically, the speaking section is divided into three parts, right? So there is part one where the examiner is just going to have a small talk with you, just as a way to sort of make you more comfortable. So, for example, they'll just ask you questions like, where are you from? Questions like whether you live in a house or you live in an apartment, or whether you're working or you're studying. Basic questions, right? What are your hobbies and stuff like that. Part two is where it starts getting a little bit more tricky, because part two is where they'll give you a topic, right? It could be any topic, and they'll give you 1 minute to prepare, and then you have to speak on this topic for 2 minutes. Um, in my course, I have a strategy wherein you can talk for the 2 minute duration without honestly running out of things to say. Because what happens usually is that if we do not have a strategy and if we think that we can just wing it, it would be harder. Because what happens is, in the beginning, you're full of like excitement and the adrenaline is high, and you're like, okay, I want to talk. And then 40-50 seconds in, you realize that you are running out of things to say. And then you start talking basically about the same things, you're repeating yourself, and it is a tautological issue. Okay, and then what happens is, maybe in under a minute and a half, you have run out of things to say completely. And that's when it gets hard, because now you have time left. the examiner is encouraging you to speak more, but you don't know what to say. Okay? So, in order to avoid this, I do have a strategy that I talk about in detail in my course. Um, but the thing I can tell you right now is try to be more generic, okay? You don't need to talk only about the topic. You can take a detour, talk about the impact it left on you. So, for example, if it's a question about a book that you read, right? So, you can talk about maybe what kind of a book it was, and then maybe you can talk about the impact it left on you, stuff like that, okay? Then you can talk about anything, right? So you can take a detour, you can talk about who gave you that book, you can make things up. Actually, that's the beauty of the speaking section. The examiner does not hold any judgment on your opinions, right? They don't care about what you say as long as you're using proper English and you're able to justify it using proper English. So you can make things up. Nobody is saying that you have to be 100% honest in the speaking section. So for me, the speaking section is most fun because this is the section where I can let my imagination and creativity take over. So you should definitely do something like that. Um, Last, part three is a deeper discussion wherein the examiner, based on your, I mean, answers from part two, is going to ask you more details, detailed questions, bigger questions, right? Things that will make you think. Because the entire idea of the speaking section is that you need to talk. Because if you don't talk, if you're giving one liner answers, one word answers, how is the examiner supposed to judge you? So that is for the speaking section. What I want to say is usually people go in with a perspective and they are anxious and worried and nervous because they think of this entire section as a, I mean, as a visa interview or a job interview. But to be honest, guys, I think it is more important that you think of this like a conversation you're having with somebody you've never met before. So most of you are applying for, I mean, different universities, or you are planning to move to a different country. So think of it like you're moving to a different country. You've just met somebody you never knew before, and they're just interested in knowing a little bit about you. So what are you like? What things do you like? What things do you dislike? So all these things, right? But the thing is that when you walk in with this perspective, it really takes a weight off of your shoulders. So this is what I would honestly, and then my most important tip is to keep on practicing. Not to toot my own horn, but I personally think that you can make a world of difference through practice. Okay, I was able to push my scores from a 5.5 in my first mock test to a band 8 in my actual IELTS exam, and it was only through practice. So I would honestly recommend that the more you practice, the easier it becomes, because I suggest everybody to take enough mock tests that you come to the point where, even if you're going to the test center and you're sitting in for your actual exam, mentally you still feel like you're taking just another mock test. So your mind has become like a machine, like a well-oiled machine, and you know how exactly you need to work. And that really helps, because whatever it is worth, guys, this is an expensive exam. I don't know how many of us can actually afford it, but unfortunately it's been made compulsory. So let's try to make the most we can, and let's try to practice enough beforehand so that at the end you don't end up requiring another attempt. That's the last thing you would want to do. But if it does come to that, then just know that this is just another exam. If you do not get your desired result, there is always an option to retake the exam. So this is just something that I like to tell my students to sort of kill that last minute anxiety and just to relieve them of that stress that they're feeling the night before the exam. Okay, so now for those of you who probably are interested in enrolling with me, I wanted to quickly share what all you can expect from the course. So the course is worth 5,000 per person. You should expect, I mean, the most basic thing that you need to expect from the course is that it is designed to ensure that everybody who enrolls gets that personalized attention, because it is my understanding that not everybody can pick up things very quickly, right? I can't expect that I will have a class with 40, 50 students and I can give them all equal attention. So my batches are very limited. I don't do people, I mean, I do maybe 2 or 3 students per class. That's it, so that I can hold interactions with you. I can understand how well you're able to understand everything. My classes are over Google Meet. I do live classes. I don't do recorded classes because uh, with recordings, I will not be able to understand how well you're progressing and how well you're doing. So, and what doubts you have. So, live classes are what we do. Of course, if I'm talking about mock tests, it's only obvious that I share mock tests with you guys. So, I will be giving you mock tests. There is an entire Excel sheet dedicated to all the mock tests, day wise divided mock tests, and I do ask my students to put in the scores every day so that I'm able to understand how well you guys are doing, if you guys are struggling with something. Each class ends with a live test. So whatever strategies we've talked about, I ask my students to see if they can apply it on a like actual mock test and how well they're doing with it. There are a lot of one-on-one sessions even after the course ends, during the course, whatever, because if you are trusting me and if you are coming on with me, then I prefer working together to make sure that you guys are getting where you want to get in your IELTS journey. One-on-one speaking mock tests, because I don't trust any other sources to give you feedback in terms of how good you're doing with your speaking test. So few speaking tests here and there, and also a speaking test the night before your exam, so that I can give you a pep talk, motivate you enough, and also give you detailed feedback in terms of what you need to be doing better in order to boost your score. At the end of the course, once you've finished it, I will be sharing an exclusive e-booklet with you. It'll hold all of my strategies, everything that I've discussed, and this is exclusive to people who finish this course. So enrolling is not the criteria. I prefer that people who have stuck around and people who are finishing the course get this e-booklet, and it's a PDF, and the idea is that you should have something on your phone. So even while you're traveling to the test center, you're on your way, you want to quickly take a look at whatever we talked about, you can do it on your phone. You don't need to worry about what else needs to be done. And of course, access to a supportive community of students, because there are a lot of students who still are in the process of taking the exam, who are still practicing and trying to make sure that they get the best score they can. And yeah, I think just a very holistic environment is what I can guarantee, wherein I am going to mentor you and I'm going to guide you and I'm going to make sure that you get the scores that you want. So thank you so much for sticking around, those of you, and I hope that even if you do not enroll with me, I hope that you guys do score well in your IELTS exam. And yeah, I hope that this brief session was helpful to you, and I'll see you around in my next
Okay,
one.
so now that we've already done the IELTS prep, we understand what the exam pattern is like, we understand what exactly the examiner is testing. So in the description box, you'll also find the link to my course brochure if in case you're wondering what all that entails. And I hope that it helps you guys. And yeah, that's it. And I hope to see you guys very soon. If there is some particular information you guys are looking for or anything likewise, you can feel free to comment down below to let me know that you're looking for this kind of information, and I'll make sure that if not a full video, I can at least make a YouTube short on it and I can upload that so that I'm able to help you guys out. The next video I have planned is for those students who unfortunately did not get the student visa last year and have been figuring out what to do now. So just to give you an idea, I had a lot of students who came to me and they were asking me that, Charu, the Italy has not worked out. What other countries can we look for? And a lot of you, including me, have thought that, okay, Germany could be a good option. So I am trying to figure out how to find somebody who is in Germany right now, who went through the entire Germany admissions in German universities and the visa and scholarships and everything, and I can share all of that with you. So as soon as I find that out, I'll be uploading that video. Let me know if you're interested in that in any way. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.